What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Average Fan Podcast. My name is Sam Ladoff. I'm joined by Oliver Scholes to talk about the match that probably no one wants to talk about in terms of Hartford Athletic versus Tulsa. Talk about what's to come in upcoming matches, I believe, against New Mexico United and the legend that is former New England Revolution striker Justin Rennicks, as well as Hartford Athletic's W League team and just overall how the front office is looking and feeling post Michelle Rue's departure. But first off, Oliver, how are we doing today? I am on my second podcast in a row. I'm going for a near world record of podcasting for potentially 2 hours. So I might need you to carry me through this one.
Yeah, I was gonna tell people that they don't know how much podcasting Sam actually does, coming right from United and Green to do this as well. And you'd never know it if he didn't say it. Always professional, always on top of his game. Uh,
M- Many people say thank you for your service, Sam, for just all that you do. It's really hard, so difficult doing this work. Really have to get my hands dirty, very intensive labor. So I appreciate it, Oliver. Thank you.
yeah, no problem at all. I'm great. I get to go to the soccer stadium. I get to go to Trinity Health 3 times this week, which is I think the most live soccer I've seen in a week. And it's actually a three times in 4 days because it's Wednesday, Friday, Saturday for two W League games and a championship game. Um, which is a lot, I will say. Particularly considering I think I've now also with this podcast and also with the roundtable earlier this week, the other 2 nights of this week have been spent talking about soccer. So it's a pretty intense week, but I'm loving it.
Hey, I'm dog sitting on, we're recording on Thursday. I'm dog sitting on Friday. So, we're just both in the busiest of weeks. We packed schedules, signing up for things I shouldn't have signed up for. But I am a good cousin. So, it's that lovely time of the year. I mean, the World Cup's coming up, USL Championship, getting into the midst of its season. I mean, USLW League pretty much about a quarter, into its season. It's a summer of soccer, Oliver. We've been hearing it so much, but it's finally here.
Yeah, it's finally the summer of soccer. Um, I- it's kind of strange. I don't know that the vibes around a lot of the soccer are great at the moment, just because of the state of the world and state of the country, and that really sucks. Um, because it should actually be a really awesome summer here in the United States with the World Cup. And if you get into soccer, if you love it, you could go see USL Championship or League One games. You'll have MLS coming back right after the World Cup. There's W League, W Super League, NWSL. There's all of the soccer that you could be loving, and it just feels like the vibes are really, really off right now. And I think that's a really harsh reminder that as much as we escape into soccer for hours and hours a week, the world sucks, and there's a lot of really bad shit going on, and we don't just get to enjoy soccer.
Yes, yes. And I mean, the U.S. has done a lot geopolitically, but the biggest war crime might be Mauricio Pochettino leaving Diego Luna off of that USA roster. We can tangentially connect the USA team to Hartford because that's the only place they apparently play in New England. But yes, not a great time. I would welcome everyone to root for Brazil, root for South Korea, um, or just root for fun. Um, but yes, not a lot of great vibes around the U.S. Men's national team. And Oliver, if I ever have to break serious news, I will give you a phone call. I will not send you an email.
I really appreciate that if you tell me that I'm getting left off the Blazing Musket All-Star team, that you will call me rather than send me an email. I think I really,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you would never have to worry about that because, like, you're definitely slotted in.
that's
But
what we
if
said about Diego Luna. So
valid. So yes, great point, great point. But now that we got our Mauricio Pochettino shots out of the way, I don't even want him coaching Hartford Athletic. Let's talk about Hartford Athletic because obviously they were kind of riding a little bit of a high. Everybody was pumped that Michelle Rue had left. But we have this 2-0 lost to FC Tulsa, and you had Samuel Carriego get a red card, which I think could be very impactful moving on. But just what was your reaction to the match and the fact that, like, obviously in a 2-0 game, Hartford really didn't come out with anything, wasn't able to create anything, and was really left disappointed with the performance.
Yeah, I think I was probably the low person on this performance. If you were on any of the fan discourse or on Reddit, there were a lot of people who felt like this was a better performance from Hartford and just kind of an unfortunate result. And I can see that argument, right? Tulsa did not create much. They were got a kind of a really lucky penalty. Lucky it was deserved. It was a handball in the box, but just that Samuel Carriaga's hand was in a really weird position, and the ball was basically cleared into his hand. And then, they had really one other meaningful look at goal, and they converted it. Close range header. Everyone lost track of the runner. Bruno Lapa did Bruno Lapa things. So I think it's easy to look at that and feel like the team maybe got sandbagged a little bit. That they played a game where they could have taken away all 3 points, and then were just kind of ambushed. And I can take that perspective, but I also think that outside of the opening maybe 10 minutes or so, Harvard didn't really produce much. They had a lot of the ball. They built up the play reasonably well, but there was just really not much cutting edge, and that I think was really kind of an indication of one of the weaknesses of Brendan Burke's team here in Hartford is that when they're forced to build up and when the other team is content to let Hartford have the ball and to sit back, as Tulsa were, Hartford can sometimes struggle for ideas to really break them down and really create meaningful opportunities. And that was really the case. After Jordan Scarlett hit the crossbar, was set piece very early on in that one, there just was not a ton going on in terms of really good, high quality looks at goal from Hartford. So, on the one hand, I absolutely take the point of view that it was just a little bit unfortunate, and there were a lot of positives in that. But in the other, I think it also underlined that Hartford still don't really have that clear sense of what they're going to do to break down a team when they're kind of forced to be the ones in possession and holding the ball.
Yeah, and it definitely is always crucial whenever you kind of get scored on in stoppage time. So I guess how do you look at those first 45 minutes and just how how much of that kind of goal impacted that second half being scored on, in first half stoppage time? Just how big of an effect that did this have on that Hartford squad?
Yeah, obviously it's always one of those gut punch things, right? When you give up right, basically the last kick of the half, right? But I think in this case, and it was perhaps magnified by the fact that if it had gone to halftime level, uh, both teams would have been kind of searching, trying to figure out how we're going to take something from this game. But with Tulsa scoring and going into the break up a goal, they were really able to, I think, come out of halftime and just say, "Hey, we're just going to sit back and make them come at us," and that suits Tulsa very well. They also would prefer not to have the ball. I think if you look at their kind of underlying statistics, they're like Hartford. They're one of the lower teams in the league in terms of amount of possession. Um, so they were able to go into halftime. Yep, we got the goal, and their team talk, I'm assuming, was just, "Hey, let's go and play our game. We're right in the position we want to be in." And whatever Brendan Burke had been planning for halftime kind of went out the window because it's now we have to chase this game. And we have to chase it against a team that is going to really be in a spot that's very comfortable for them. So I think it was magnified, and it's always magnified for Hartford when they have to play from behind because they would prefer to be on top of the game rather than trying to get a goal back. Um, so, yeah, you never want to concede late, and I think particularly for Hartford, and particularly in the circumstances too, where it was just this like, oh my God, like, can you believe like the ball got cleared into his hand like that? Like that just nothing about that feels good, and it really just disrupts everything you were maybe thinking about going into halftime, and also put Tulsa in a very comfortable position. So all in all, really really bad news.
Yeah, and kind of looking to the second half and maybe looking to a bit more positive. You saw Emmanuel Samaria get some minutes, and the subs are pretty interesting. Seeing Sadat Anaku get into the game, Hernandez as well. I guess what did he make of those subs, and what did he make of the minutes, particularly from Samaria?
His looked really good. I mean, he's not 100%. He's not, he's a little rusty. So it's not perfect, but he's got to get out on the pitch, and he's also just a very high caliber player, so he's not going to need a lot of time to really come up to speed. So I thought he looked good. You could start to see the overlaps coming down that side almost immediately, and the team again they just look more balanced when they have somebody out there on one side and Anderson on the other. So that was very good. We'll see on Saturday against New Mexico how that is continuing to grow and develop. A little bit of unfortunate timing here because I think Samadia has been called up again by his national team, and I think he's going to miss the next game, which is a USL Cup game against New York Cosmos. I think he'll probably only miss the one game, but so a little bit unfortunate timing there. But he looked good. I, I'm interested to see that Andres Hernandez seems to have been the guy who's kind of earning some of those bench minutes. Brendan Burke seems to have developed confidence in him as a bit of a grinder, as a guy who can get into the game and not necessarily make a contribution as uh, a player with attacking flair or something like that, but can really get in and influence the game and impact the game, and not just it's not just a body on the end of the bench. So that's really interesting to me, and I think an important development. And that was the case with Hernandez when he was with Alianza, I think it was in El Salvador, was that he was really relied on for some pretty high leverage minutes in the Clausura or the Apertura, particularly in the finals of those competitions. And so it's interesting to see that Brendan Burke is also starting to rely on him a little bit and bring him into the squad like that. And I hope that continues to develop. That would be really welcome for Hartford to have another body in the midfield that they could count on. Sadat Anaku, it just doesn't really seem like he's clicked. Uh, I maybe maybe it never will for him. I don't know. We haven't even had a half season, so I don't want to write him off. But it just feels like he's not quite getting there, and he's not a player who comes up organically when Brendan Burke is talking to the media. It's like, oh, this is a guy I really want to plug. Um, he's never really said anything critical of him. He's always got praise for him when he's asked about him. But it's notable, I think, that he's not a player where Burke is really being like, oh, Sadat Anaku, yeah, like watch him, he's really really good, because he is never shy about trying to raise the profile of a player that he thinks is really really worthy of it. So he's not passing the eye test. He doesn't really seem to be earning the minutes. He's got the minutes now because Adiwali Obalola is out, and I really would not be surprised if um, Sagan gets a look. He's been playing with Hartford Athletic's two side in UPSL a little bit, where he scored a few goals and has looked good. So probably not a whole lot to be gained for him at that level of competition. So he might get some more looks into the summer here. But as I said last time, I would not be at all surprised to see a short-term loan here. I think that would be something where another body in the mix, not a starter, so you're probably not looking at someone who's that caliber of player, but a bench player, a rotational player who can give something that it doesn't appear Sadat Anaku.
Yeah, you kind of talked about Hartford's attack. I guess maybe for the listeners, maybe even for myself, just how does Hartford look to attack? Are they reliant on wing play? Is that part of the reason? There is the struggles. Is there an over reliance? Is it the fact that Augie Williams isn't being able to perform? Just how does this team typically look to attack, and why are they having these struggles currently?
Yeah, well, they've always wanted to go down the wings. If you go back to last season, to the 2025 season when they were successful in the summer, they were basically completely bypassing the midfield. It was, we're going to go down the right, it's Sebastian Anderson, awesome. We're going to go to the left, it's Emmanuel Samadia. Then you've got this mix of players in front of them: Mishin Galina, Kyle Edwards, Adiwali Obalola, obviously Mamadou Diang last year, Jack Panayiotou, right? All these guys up there, Jonathan Jimenez, and kind of, you know, attacking midfield, but wider positions, more so than Samuel Torreaga might be. Um, so they've always wanted to go down the sides, and I think they still continue to want to go down the sides. Uh, what I think has been harming them so far, we've talked about a few times, is that without a player of Samadia's quality on the left, it's just been very one-dimensional. They haven't been able to create problems for teams by forcing them to overcommit to one side or the other, and then hitting them on the other flank. So they do really want to go down the sides, and they want to have the option of which side they want to go down. They want to be able to switch the play. They want to be able to, overload the left with Samadia and Galena. They want to be able to overload the right. Maybe it's Samuel Cariaga pulling out to that side, or Barry Coffey alongside Sebastian Anderson. Um, but they don't really want to go through the middle. If you look at the guys who play in kind of anchoring those midfield positions like Junior Morera or Beverly Bakagila, they are not guys who advance the play. They've worked really hard with Junior Morera to grow that aspect of his game, but it's not really reached the USL Championship level, I don't think. And so going through the midfield is really, really difficult for this team, going through the center of the park. So they're really looking to go down the edges. And it's not always pretty when you're completely bypassing the midfield. It's not always attractive and fun to watch. Last year was devastatingly effective during that period of time, June, July, August, September into October when they won the cup. So far this season, it has not been. But that's the plan.
Yeah, and I guess as we kind of begin to transition into the match against New Mexico, just how impactful do you think this Samuel Carriaga absence will be? Obviously, with the red card, just how much will he be missed in this upcoming match?
I think he'll be missed a lot. Every time I ask Brendan Burke, like, what's the difference with this team when they're scoring goals? What makes you good? He's always like, it's Samuel Cariaga, it's Samu, it's Samu, it's Samu. He really has been plugging him, totally unprompted as a key piece for this team since before the season started, since they, acquired him permanently from Lanús in the offseason. Um, Now, the plus side here is that Barry Coffey is an attacking midfielder who is extraordinarily capable. We saw that when he started against Brooklyn earlier this season with a goal and an assist in that game. We've seen it again against Brooklyn, actually in the cup when he picked up the assist for Cariaga, right in that what turned out to be the game winner in that game. Um, so I think it's impactful because Cariaga is a player that Brendan Burke believes is special, and he's absolutely the first name in the team sheet whenever he's healthy and available. However, I think it is a pretty straightforward swap to put Barry Coffey out there. It does limit the options a bit, if you would maybe even wanting to push Coffey out wide on the right or something like that, you're not able to do that as much. Um, but it's a blow. But I think it's also one that is a little bit easier to weather than perhaps some other areas on the pitch because the team also has a high level of confidence in Barry Coffey.
Yeah, and looking ahead to New Mexico United, kind of recently snapped a two-game losing, if you want to call it a losing streak, after two straight losses, in all comps, were able to beat Charleston Battery, 1-0, a team that's kind of on the fringes of the playoff positions. Just what are your impressions of them and what they could potentially bring to Hartford this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, they're when we talked about Tulsa last week, I said they were a pretty balanced team in attack, and I feel kind of the same way about New Mexico. There is no one player in their attack that really stands out as like the guy that you have to kind of lock down. So I that is something that can be a little bit of a problem for Hartford when they are confronted with an attack that has a few different options. They do sometimes struggle a little bit. Uh, but the other thing I'll say about New Mexico is that there is a way that they actually, I think, line up as a little better opportunity for Hartford than Tulsa did. If you look at what we were talking about earlier, where Tulsa is pretty content to sit back, and Hartford sometimes struggles with that mirror match, New Mexico is kind of on the opposite. They are a much more possession heavy team. They want to be on the ball. That's the kind of play style that will create opportunities for Hartford in those transition moments as New Mexico plays forward more into the Hartford half of the pitch and creates those chances that Hartford really wants to be able to exploit. So I think New Mexico are balanced. They're a very middle of the pack team by basically every metric that you can conjure to your imagination. You look at expected goals, you look at, any of these things, they fall right in the middle. Goals per game, goals conceded per game, all these things. So they don't really stand out in any particular area. I do think their attack is fairly balanced. Greg Hurst is always dangerous. He's a dangerous scorer at this level, and you have to watch out for him. But it's not just him. Niall Reed-Steven. There's other players in the mix there too who are able to participate there. But as I said, I think this lines up a little bit more to Hartford's benefit just because of what New Mexico wants to do, which is to be a little bit more possession oriented. And we saw this last year when New Mexico came to Trinity Health Stadium last summer, and Hartford shellacked them. That they were coming forward, and Hartford just hit them on the counter like 3 times, 4 times, 5. They just kept going the other way. And I'm not saying this game will play out exactly the same way. I don't think Hartford is clicking like they were at that point last summer. But they are a team that Hartford is perhaps a little bit better positioned to exploit than Tulsa was.
Yes, I mean, a glaring omission of Justin Rennick, Oliver. I can't believe that you'd forget the man who scored a U20 goal against France, and played in Finland. But I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you. But I think, looking at just overall, how do you think Hartford will respond to the 2-0 loss? And I guess what are kind of your expectations, whether it's if you're talking with Brendan Burke or just how the squad has performed this season on how they'll look to respond after a difficult loss?
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. I think it was frustrating loss, not just in terms of the scoreline, but you could see that even before the Carriaga red card, it was starting to get a little chippy out there in that game, and Hartford were showing some frustration. One thing that Brendan Burke has been really good about doing in his time here in Hartford is not letting those things build up. He's been very good at, like, let's shake that off, let's dissipate that tension, let's figure out how we're going to get back out on the pitch in the next game and get a result. Uh, and honestly, really, other than in the really early parts of both the 2024 and 2025 season, Hartford have not struggled through long periods of poor results. They've not really had those things weighing on them. Now, you know, you can't totally discount that, right? There were those stretches, 6 games in a row without a win in 2024, the slow start last year. So, you do worry maybe a little bit that, like, it could happen. But by and large, I think Brendan Burke is pretty good at just, hey, we're moving on. Tough loss. We played well. Here's the things we did. You know, we got to watch a little bit of tape on that second Tulsa goal and make sure we don't lose track of runners like that. Give free headers at the back post, that sort of thing. But overall, I don't know that there's much that Hartford is really going to look back on that game when they get into training and say, wow, we really got beat. We really got, crushed there. We really have a lot of work to do. Uh, so I think they'll be well positioned to bounce back for this one. Um, I do worry a little bit that there just isn't the attacking firepower at the moment because nobody has really stepped forward to score goals. But the defense has by and large been good enough that they don't need a ton of goals. So while I would prefer to feel confident in their ability to score 2, 3, 4 goals if they needed to, they probably don't need to. So I think, you just shake it off, you come back, you go out there, you look to take advantage of the opportunities that New Mexico will present in transition. Maybe get a goal in the first 20 minutes if you can to, kind of ease the pressure. Um, but stay focused and don't dwell too much on that last loss.
Definitely, and I guess, you kind of mentioned, what do you think will be the key for this match? Is it being able to create on offense? Is it being able to have a good performance from Augie Williams? Is it just having a strong defensive effort and kind of locking down New Mexico, or is it something else? Just what do you think is kind of the key to the game that fans should be looking out for against New Mexico?
I personally think they got to come out with some intent. Um, when Hartford has been bad during Brendan Burke's tenure, it's because they've largely, not exclusively, but largely because they've kind of come out flat. They've come out without a real sense of purpose in games. And when they've been good, it's because they've been on the front foot from the whistle, from the first whistle. And so I think if you're looking for some indication in this game of where Hartford is, and Brendan Burke says this pretty frequently, right, in press conferences and post games and things like that. That it's that first 15 minutes. What do we look like? What's our intent? Are we hitting those press cues? Are we, are we looking to get the ball forward? Is our passing sharp? Are we on the same page in attack? Those kinds of things. It's the Jordan Scarlett quote from after the Cup victory that everybody loved, that we don't press, we hunt. Is the team doing that? Do they look like they have that mentality? And if they look like they have that mentality, then they're in a good position regardless of the result. If they don't look like they have that mentality, then there's still work to be done, even if they are able to grind out a result against New Mexico. So that's the thing that I would really look for is, do they have that mentality?
Yes, yes. So it will be interesting to see how Hartford does perform. And before we get to the USLW League side, obviously, you mentioned the previous podcast that Court Jeske was in Hartford for some reason. We don't know what reason that was. But just overall, what's the state of the front office, obviously, post Michelle Rue's uh, departure, and just kind of give the listeners a state of how operationally the team is doing?
Yeah, so update on Court Jeske. It's kind of a consulting role. Short term, he's coming up to Hartford a couple of days a week. I think he's currently based in New Jersey, so he's driving or taking the train up, maybe 1, 2 days a week to advise purely on the commercial side of this operation, not really on the footballing side at all. Um, and it's really intended to be short term, a month, 2 months, probably not even through the end of the season would be my guess. Um, and I think that, when we talked about this last week, I said that that's interesting, but it's maybe not earth shattering. And I actually want to amend that statement after talking to Bruce Mandel this week and talking to a couple other club employees, because I don't know that I had quite got my arms around how um, how poorly structured the front office had become under Michelle Rue, and just in terms of the day-to-day operations, how much low-hanging fruit there was in terms of improvement. And because what I've heard from people talking about Court Jeske's contributions so far, everyone has been very, has emphasized that nothing he's done has like reinvented the wheel. He's not bringing in these crazy, like, avant-garde ideas about how to run a football club. It's low-hanging fruit. It's basic day-to-day operations. It's streamlining. It's getting everybody on the same page. Um, it's things as simple as bringing like just a professional structure to their weekly leadership meetings. The heads of ticketing and marketing and operations and so on, getting in a room with a clear agenda and a clear path to getting deliverables for the next week, right? And when I say that, and I'm like, Court Jeske has brought these things to Hartford Athletic, people listening are like, what are you talking about? Like, we do that in any business in the world, right? Like, those are just basic operational things that you do on some cadence, but they were evidently not happening in Hartford. And so I think when I said I don't know that a consulting role will be really earth-shattering, I was not realizing how much low-hanging fruit there might really be here for someone like Court Jeske, who has a lot of experience with professional football in this country, to say, hey, I just have some thoughts about how you could do these meetings, or I have some thoughts about how you could run your reporting that's just going to streamline things and improve it a little bit. So I think there is actually a lot to be gained here from Court Jeske being present, even if it's only for a couple of months, because it does appear that the front office experience in Harvard had become so degraded that there was just so much that even someone with a bare level of professional experience, let alone the amount of experience that Court Jeske has, could really bring to that experience for Harvard. So that I think is one thing that I had not fully comprehended, and I'm really interested to see what that means for the club's front office operation. One thing I will say just on that note is that at the W League game on Wednesday night, I don't necessarily know whether fans would have picked up on it because I don't know that it was coming out in some of those operational elements. But I noticed when I was on the pitch after the game how much more coordination there seemed to be between the different components of the club, the operations, communications, the other front office folks who are heading up the W League effort. There just seemed to be a different level of communication and coordination, and it produced a better experience. Like sometimes after a championship game, I'll get on the pitch and like there's no one has wrangled any players for post game media, um, anything like that. And last night I got Danny Barrera, I got four of the women from the W League team came over. Like it was just much better organized, and I think some of that is a byproduct of just getting these people on the same page, right? And making it clear like this is your responsibility, this is your accountability. You do this, I do this, right? It all fits together. And what I took from that also was that like the people who are there in the front office can execute this, right? This front office is staffed by people who can be very good at these jobs, but they've not been put in a position to succeed. So all of that is a really long way to say that I think Korczewski, even in a very short period, has just brought a level of just like, hey, this is how we do a professional job together to this team that has really, really been lacking. Now going forward, it's obviously not going to be Korczewski, right? It's going to be someone else. And I think what I heard from Bruce Mandel was this is the moment where the club has to figure out what does that next leader look like. And so they need to take this period of time here to understand where their strengths are, where their gaps are, what their priorities are for the future so they can identify someone who they believe can deliver on those priorities into the future. So I would not expect to see an appointment of a permanent COO, CEO, whatever it's going to be for a little bit here while the club works through what some of those priorities might be.
Definitely, definitely. And moving over to the USLW League side, I mean, compared to what we're seeing on the USL Championship, this team is flying. They are currently tied for first with Vermont Green FC for top of the division, fresh off an absolutely an amazing, performance against AC Connecticut. Just overall, what's it been like covering this team, and what's been your impressions of how they've been able to perform early on, but also a quarter into the season?
Yeah, right. The season's not very long, right? 3 games is 30% of the game, so it's basically over, right? Like you know, um, I think through the first couple of games, there was just a little bit of not quite putting it all together, right? And that's not hugely surprising, right? You bring a group of players together, you give them 8 days of training camp. Some of them may have played together before, but not for some number of years. They played together in different systems. You have combinations of players who have been together, but not with others. So not hugely surprising that, in games one and games two, they didn't look like they were quite all the way there. What we saw last night or Wednesday night, I guess, depending on when this podcast actually goes out, um, was that they got all the way there, right? You look at, 7 goals in a game, and I don't know that AC Connecticut got out of their own half more than like 6 times in the whole game. I don't think they took a shot from closer than 30 yards out. And they did get a few attempts on goal. It wasn't that one-sided, but none of them were really good looks. Um, some of them barely even qualified as looks, right? It was kind of kick the ball at towards the goal sort of situation. And just Hartford was absolutely feasting. They were absolutely tearing AC Connecticut apart down the left-hand side of the Hartford attack. It didn't seem to matter who was going that way. Rebecca Frisk, Rachel Wygant, Maya Johnson came on. Like everybody was just beating the AC Connecticut fullbacks, getting the ball into the box. Finishing was very good, particularly in the second half. Just really, really, really clicking. And 7-0 games are nice. You don't necessarily take too much from them once you score that many goals because something was going badly wrong for the other team at that point. Um, but it was real nice and really great vibes in the stadium all around that.
Yeah, speaking of kind of the vibes in the stadium, just what has kind of the fan support, what is the stadium atmosphere kind of been like? Obviously, when you have a first game, there can be a large or potentially larger turnout than what you might get used to. But just how have kind of the Hartford soccer fans kind of reacted now that, again, we are a little bit deeper into the season? You're coming off of a Wednesday, a midweek game, and you have plenty of games coming up at Hartford. Just what has kind of the support been like for this USLW League team so far?
Yeah, this game was not as well attended. I think it's not the first game, right? The cliche is that the hardest game to sell is the second one, right? The first one's easy and then it gets harder. So a little bit harder, and I think the weeknight games are just going to be so tough. They've gone with the 7:30 kickoff, which I understand is, you know, for a number of reasons, but it makes it a pretty late night if you're bringing kids, and uh, larger proportion of the fans of this team are young people than of the championship team, I think. So it's making it really, really tough. So it was a smaller crowd, um, but a really energetic one, a really engaged crowd. So it wasn't, 500 people sitting in the stands, sulking. It was really, really good atmosphere and good vibe. And the jerseys appear to have sold very well, from what I could tell. A lot of fans wearing the jerseys, um, which I think is a great sign, right? I know the jerseys weren't really well received with some of the hardcore supporters. But yeah, like you look back to 2019, and Hartford's first home jersey was garbage. Like it was just an absolute garbage jersey, and it sold like crazy because people were so excited. You still see them in the stands. Like there are still people in the stands today who are wearing that 2019 jersey, which is still a garbage jersey, right? Um, so I think even if people are kind of like, these jerseys aren't great, people are buying them. They're excited. They're there in the stands. It was honestly, for a Wednesday night game for amateur soccer, it was a great turnout. I'm really curious to see what Friday looks like, tomorrow night looks like, because I think that's in some ways a better tell of where the support for this team could realistically be when you've got that, you know, technically weekend night game, which is a little bit easier to be like, let the kids stay up late, or people want to go out for the night. They don't have work tomorrow, those kinds of things. Um, but its team is very well supported. People are very, very excited about it. I think winning 7-0 will really also inspire some of those people to come back again because they got to see a lot of fun stuff, which is goals being scored. Um, and I think it's in a really good spot right.
Yeah, and just overall, what's kind of your sense of Danny Barrer's assessment of how well the team's been able to perform, and how has this team maybe met or kind of exceeded your expectations of how they will perform so far this season?
So from Danny Barrera's perspective, I think they're really delivering on what he wants them to do, which is simply to express themselves on the pitch. The season is too short for installing, complicated tactics. You cannot, like, oh, we're gonna play a 4-2-3-1, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna have all this complicated work on our press triggers, and we're gonna watch tons of film, right? There isn't time for any of that to install that over a 10-game season. You don't completely ignore it, right? You do your research when you can, prepare as best you can, but like it's not um, practical, right, to have that level of installing a complicated philosophy. So he has really asked them to, we brought you here because you are an expressive player. You like to have the ball at your feet. You like to create. You like to get forward. You want to um, uh, have that flair, right? Whatever that means for your particular position. And I think they're really delivering on that. And we saw that last night, that so many of the players were able to be expressive in that way. Emma Gregorski is a fullback, and she had 2 assists on the night. Ashley Reyes, the attacking midfielder, had 2 goals. Rebecca Frisk gets a goal and an assist. And you get Shay Kelleher coming off the bench. She gets a goal and an assist. Maya Johnson comes off the bench. She's cooking her defender. Like everyone is just expressing themselves in that way that I think Danny Brewer was really, really hoping for. And honestly, like that's just fun to watch. If you're going to go watch soccer at this level in particular, where it's a short season, and there isn't this like, oh, we've got 34 games to, get through and grind through the season and then playoffs and this and that. Let's watch some really talented players just express themselves on the pitch. What's exceeded my expectations for it is that they haven't conceded a goal. They're through 3 games without conceding, and for a league that where scoring is as frequent and where the attack is as free flowing as it is for the W League, and much the same way as it is in League Two, I think it really is surprising to me that not only have they not conceded, but they haven't really looked like conceding. I think Vermont had one really good opportunity in the first half of that first game where They had their forward had the ball in a really promising spot and then just couldn't really get much power on it, and it didn't go anywhere. But outside of that, Hartford has not been giving up much at all, and that's really, really impressive. I don't think it'll last forever. They'll concede at some point, even over a 10-game season. Um, but I'm really, really impressed with how they've come together defensively, and that has absolutely exceeded my expectations.
And I guess, being tied with Vermont, for the division lead, with what you've been able to see so far and, who they've been able to go up against, do you think this team could potentially compete, for a division title, seeing that, again, they're currently tied for first and have seemingly performed, quite well and gotten off to a good start?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this point, why not, right? You only got 7 games left. I think the trick for Hartford is they're going to have to go to Vermont twice. That's one of the little wrinkles in this season. They're going to have to head up to Burlington 2 times this season over the remaining 7 games. So I think that maybe gives Vermont a little bit of an edge, having the extra home game there against Hartford, particularly because they did come down to Trinity Health and they got a point, right? They got a road point in that game, which whether Hartford was the better team or not, Vermont took something away from that game, which could end up being important. So I think maybe Vermont has a slight edge right now. It'll be interesting to see where things sit after this weekend. Harvard have Hudson Valley Crusaders coming in. Hudson Valley Crusaders played to a 3-3 draw with AC Connecticut, I believe, in their first game. So when you look at that, and Hartford just beat AC Connecticut 7-0, that suggests that there might be goals there again for Hartford against Hudson Valley Crusaders, and that would be really good for them to go out there and get another 3 or 4 goals or something in this one. Um, on the flip side for Hartford, it's 2 games in 48 hours, which is like crazy scheduling, even for amateur, even in a short season. Danny Barrera was really able to rotate his squad heavily and then give some of the women quite a bit of rest. He used all his substitutions. He pulled off I think 5 players or 4 players at the hour mark. So I don't know. I think after this weekend we'll be in maybe in a little bit better position to judge. But I don't. Yeah, why not? Why not Hartford?
Why not Hartford? Why not Hartford indeed? I mean, the men's side, the USL Championship side, was able to get the Jägermeister Cup. Maybe we see the women get the Northeast Division, New England Division, and potentially, hey, maybe they go all the way. But Oliver, always great chatting with you. Always appreciate all the average fans out there who are listening to us. If you are listening to us, make sure to give us a nice 5-star review wherever you listen. Make sure to subscribe, download whatever you do on your preferred podcast platform. You can also check us out on the Blazing Musket YouTube, where we post the video versions of this podcast, as well as various other podcasts, such as United in Green and the Blazing Musket podcast, where Oliver was just on to talk about the lovely Hartford Athletic season so far, as well as Diego Luna being left off of the U.S. men's national team. But Oliver, great chatting with you, and as always, what is your final word?
Yeah. So Sam alerted me to the fact that apparently America is about to invade Cuba, and I got to
Per
be honest with you, I don't.
Politico, per Politico,
Sorry, this is not a.
everything is in place, and it could take one decision from the president to be like, "Hey, Cuba, that's ours now."
So you know, this is not a Sam exclusive report that we're about to invade Cuba.
I
But
have
my take on this is
no inner circle access to this administration.
that's good to hear. Thanks. Thanks. I'm glad you don't have those kind of connections, Sam. But my take on this is we shouldn't do it. I don't think it's gonna be a surprise to anyone
Bold.
who's heard me talk about Venezuela or heard me talk about Iraq so far on here or when I was the Talisman Zone on the Blazing Musket podcast. But I think this is really terrible shit and we shouldn't be doing it. And I don't know. We gotta try these people for some crimes, and when all this is over, if we're ever lucky enough to see that, this is really terrible.